Hey everyone, quick thing before we dive in. I was looking at my analytics and it turns out most of the people watching aren't actually subscribed. See this? Way more views than subscribers. If you're enjoying the videos and want to see more, hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel grow and you'll never miss new uploads. Alright, let's get into it.
I wasn't supposed to survive. Down at the bottom of Farloom, they called us threadlings. No names. We weren't worth naming. If you wanted one, you had to drag yourself up, prove you belonged in the Citadel, and hope the nobles noticed you. Most of us never got that far. We existed in these dark, fetid tunnels, where the silk grew thick over everything like some kind of disease. It muffled everything. Our voices, our footsteps, trapped the air until breathing felt like sucking cobwebs through teeth. We consumed whatever scraps we could find, beetle shells, rotting moss, sometimes fungal growth if the upper folks hadn't harvested it all first. No light down there. Just those threads that glowed faintly, like sick veins under dying skin. Sometimes they'd pulse, like they were breathing. I used to press my ear to them, and if I got very still, I swear I could hear them whispering. The first one to disappear was this one threadling we called Red. Had this birthmark that made it look perpetually bruised. One night, it collapsed next to me in our little hollow. By morning, there was just this cocoon stuck to the wall, still warm. None of us touched it. We never touched those things. Then another vanished, then another. No screaming, no struggling, just whispers in the silk getting louder every night. I knew I was next. The night it happened, I woke choking. Threads had wrapped around my limbs. They weren't dry like normal silk, they were wet, like someone had ripped veins right out of a body. I thrashed, but the more I fought, the deeper they dug in, sliding under my skin. And then I heard it. Clear as decay this time. A voice in the silk. Not just one voice, not a bunch either. Something in between, like a chorus made of threads pulled tight until they hummed with hunger. You're thin, empty, hollow. We'll fill you up. I don't know how long I lay there listening before the threads loosened up. When I finally sat up, the others were gone, all of them. Dozens of cocoons lined the tunnel, swaying gently like they were breathing. My mouth tasted like metal. My stomach, for the first time ever, felt full. I don't remember feeding. I don't remember anything, except the sound of threads snapping tight around bone. I tried to run, but the silk pulled at me, dragging me deeper into the tunnels. My limbs jerked around like a puppet's, moving without my will. That's when I found it. A husk crumpled in a webbed corner, bones picked clean but still wrapped in silk. In its chest was this weapon. Not really a sword, not really a needle, just bone sharpened to a nasty point, with cords wrapped around it that still twitched. I reached for it. Didn't want to. My arm just moved on its own. The second I touched it, the silk in my veins shivered like it recognized an old friend. The weapon's thread tangled into mine, pulling tight, binding us together. I tried to drop it. Couldn't. My fingers just clenched until the bone cut into my palm. And then I laughed. The first time I killed was an accident. At least I think it was. There was this smaller threadling who tried to grab the weapon while I was dormant. We fought. It screamed when the needle went into its throat. But no blood came out. Instead, this red silk poured from it, spilling out in ribbons, curling in the air like worms. They wrapped around my limbs, my core, and sunk into me. It shriveled up to nothing in seconds. When it was over, I wasn't hungry anymore. My form felt warm all over, and I couldn't stop that damn laughing. The whispers started praising me after that. They taught me how to move. My body jerked in patterns I didn't understand, lunges and spins. I called it dancing because I didn't know what else to call it. But it wasn't me doing it. I wasn't choosing. I was being played, like a puppet. The others started fearing me. When I passed, they turned away. Some spit, some whispered, some prayed to whatever gods they thought might listen. But when I killed again, and again, they started watching. None stopped me.
None could. Every time I fought, the blade left these red patterns, delicate, intricate, beautiful, like fancy embroidery on the bodies of the fallen. And that creepy laugh never stopped. I figured out quickly that hunger didn't go away. It just changed what it wanted. It wasn't my core hurting anymore. It was this emptiness in my limbs when the threads got loose. This ache when the needle didn't move. The way my form shook if I went too long without hearing silk stretch and sing. I'd tremble like I was starving until the blade carved its patterns and those lace patterns bloomed in the bodies. Then, for a while, I could exist. The whispers taught me steps. That's what they called them, steps. Like this was some performance at the Citadel. The silk would tighten in my tendons, yank left or right, twist, jump. If I thought it, the pain was awful. If I just went with it, the movement felt almost good. I started giving in quicker. I asked the webs once, after a killing that left the tunnel painted red, "Why me?" "Because you were empty enough for us to fit inside." I started laughing again. Didn't want to. Hated that sound. It wasn't mine. It didn't sound like it came from a throat. It sounded like someone plucking a string until it screamed. They learned to hear it coming. They ran. Those who didn't became part of the pattern. I'm telling you this like I regret it, but the truth is uglier. Sometimes I did feel bad, but other times the thread swarmed and the needle moved and the silk sang and everything made sense, all lines and angles answering each other. The tunnels were just a canvas, and my steps were the brush. I woke once with my form completely fused to the weapon. The bone had grown through my tissue like some twisted root. I tried to pull it off, and the threads inside me hissed. No words, just heat and warning. And blood silk beaded through my skin, not dripping away, but crawling back toward the wound like frightened parasites returning home. I gave up. I rested with my appendage wrapped around the needle. I don't remember ever opening it after that. I saw an audience the first time at this place we called the Choke. The tunnel got so narrow, even air had to squeeze to get through. There, in that tight spot, the webs hung from ceiling to floor, a curtain. Behind it, dark shadows leaned forward. I felt eyes. I felt them wanting. I bowed because the silk yanked my form into a curve and held me there until my structure creaked. The shadows rippled like they liked that. When I tried to see their faces, I found just blank white ovals with thread-crossed mouths. I faltered. The silk snapped me straight. The needle flashed. The choke opened up. After, alone, I pressed against the wall where the audience had been. Just webs. Empty. I told myself I'd imagined them, that I was depleted. I told myself many falsehoods while I trembled until the need to dance got teeth again. Word about me spread upward. Don't know how. Sound doesn't travel well through silk. But fear spreads like mold. You don't see it till it's everywhere. Scavengers started leaving scraps near where I rested. Food and fungus and clean water. Not gifts, bribes to keep me moving past their hollows. I took them. No point in pretending I wouldn't. A weaver came looking for me in the 12 arms, where narrow shafts twisted together around a black well. It was old. You could hear it in its threads. They creaked when it moved. It wore a mask with 6 little eyes colored a soft green, like moss growing on bones. It put a lantern in the web between us. The light bounced and multiplied, reflections stretching like veins.
Vessel, it said, and the silk inside me shuddered at the word and tried to make me laugh. I clenched tight. You carry a song that isn't yours. I carry what carries me, I said, and it almost sounded like me speaking. It looked at my appendage. It saw the bone growing through tissue, how the grip had become a wound that wouldn't heal. You can't put it down. No. Does it hurt? Yes, I said, when it's quiet. It nodded, like I told it something it expected. It put a spool by me. The thread on it was black and dry and didn't move like the others. It just sat there calm, like it trusted me. If you have to dance, learn to pick your floor. This will hold when other silk slips. It doesn't answer to the same hunger. The hunger hurt it. It pressed against my core like hands. I wanted to throw the spool down the well just to see its reaction, feel something that wasn't the tug. Instead, I bent, pulled gently, pulled, and picked it up. It was cool, normal, a thread like a straight line on a map. I tied it around myself. For the first time in ages, I moved without the weapon moving with me. Just a little, just an inch, but it was mine.
I leaked then, not because I was free, I wasn't, but because I remembered, for one tiny moment, what it felt like to be a form that belonged to itself. Go up, the weaver said, like it knew I would anyway. If you have to, go up, but keep a straight thread with you. When the song drowns you, you can follow it back. I laughed. Not mine, not funny. It didn't flinch. I don't fear laughter, it said, only silence. When I looked down to express something like gratitude, it was already climbing, lantern bobbing toward a thinner light. I wanted to call after it, ask its designation, but the silk tugged, and the well gaped, and the hunger said step, and I did. The straight thread stayed cool against me, a single note under all the noise. The audience got bigger. Every narrow ledge above the 12 arms, every pocket of air that could fit a face, filled with those white ovals and thread-crossed mouths. I tried not to look up. The silk didn't care. It bowed me again. The shadows leaned forward as one, hungry. They loved me. I hated them. I loved them. That's how this twisted dance works. At the top of the 12 arms, a door. That's what it looked like. Not wood, not stone, a shape in the webs where they hung differently, like something was underneath. I touched it with the tip of the needle. The threads pulled back like something taking a breath. Cool air rushed over me. For the first time since I could remember, I sensed something that wasn't dust and damp and the metal taste. It smelled like rain on stone. It smelled like new cloth cut clean. I stepped through before the hunger had to ask. Up is a lie you tell yourself until the world buys it. The space past the door wasn't sky. It was just a bigger cave. A throat opened up by time and hands. But there was wind, real wind, and the webs outlined it like ribs. The light here had colors, pale greens, old gold, a bruised blue like the mark on Red's face. I squinted. The silk inside me didn't care. It measured the world in angles. It tugged. I followed. I learned that blood, when the silk gets done with it, can act like thread. It sticks. It climbs. It loops back on itself like a thought you can't stop thinking. My killing left patterns, not puddles. I tried not to see how pretty it was, because every time I liked the symmetry, I knew the hunger had won again. The ones up here wore coverings. That shocked me more than the colors. Fabric instead of webs, dyed and cut and stitched in ways that tried too hard to look effortless. Their masks had open mouths. They talked. They gossiped. They moved away without looking directly at me, the way you avoid focusing on something that might be a statue or might be alive and you don't want to find out which. Dancer, Someone hissed, not at me, but near me, warning others. The Citadel will want this one. Like I was a ripe fruit ready to be picked.
The Citadel wasn't a palace once you got inside. It was a geometry lesson with silver nails, corridors that made you turn when you should have been able to move straight, balconies that watched you back. The floor was too clean. The dust had been told to behave, and it had listened. They gave me a chamber. Not a cell, they insisted. The mask with a mouth smiled, and the silk pulled my form to copy it until my structure hurt, but a chamber. There was a platform like a tomb, and a mirror like a lake, and a basin with water. I didn't rest on the platform. I crouched in the corner and watched my reflection watch me back until I knew where the cracks in the glass were and how the light would hit the bone if I lifted it just so. Later, a courier in bright red wrappings brought me a needle case, not bone, metal polished to shine like a mirror, lined with velvet. I backed away from it. The silk inside me pressed forward like a predator at a gate. I opened it because the hunger would force me if I didn't. Inside were a dozen gilded pins. Gifts from patrons, the courier said. A proper dancer should have proper tools. I've got one, I said, and held up my appendage. The bone gleamed dully, wet-looking where my tissue had grown around it. The courier's eyes skipped across it, landed on the floor, ran back up. Of course, it said. Of course. But variety keeps an audience interested. I strapped the case to me because the silk took control and did it. I told myself I'd never use them. I told myself I'd keep them closed like a mouth. I used them all. Eventually. They called it a performance. What I remember is a long hall, a hush curved like a bowl, the edge of a balcony lined with white ovals that might have been faces. I remember the first opponent, taller than me, masked like a bird, moving with a control that made me sick with envy. It would have been beautiful if we had been something other than what we are. The silk took me. I wanted to resist, to test the straight thread and follow it back to my own movements, but the whisper was a command now. Step. Leap. Turn. Laugh. I turned. The audience leaned like a tide. When I stabbed through the bird mask, red thread spooled from the beak and looped around me. Hot and eager, I hissed. The spool suddenly went cold, a line against the heat. For a heartbeat, I found a place between the pull and the push. I could almost choose. This is how I learned to survive the Citadel, not by fighting the dance, but by finding that thin place in each move where my form and the silk both pretended we wanted the same thing. After the first, they sent more. A pair, a trio, a swarm. Sometimes I was enforcer, sent down the corridors that misbehaved and taught them straightness with the tip of a blade. Sometimes I was entertainment. Both felt the same from inside the strings. They gave me a designation in public. Lace. The first time, the hall breathed it in like tasting sugar. I bowed because the silk bowed me. The audience finally opened their mouths. The threads snapped. The sound of them breaking was bright and wrong and right. I learned to laugh on the inhale so I could still listen for the straight thread on the exhale. I learned to look past my reflection's eyes because sometimes it wasn't me in there, just something that knew the steps and wanted to practice. I learned that fear opens doors as easily as keys do if you give it a handle. A rumor started, like rumors do, that I couldn't die, that if I fell, the silk would unravel me and re-thread me in the nearest cocoon, tighter than before. I didn't test it. I didn't have to. Each time I woke with the needle deeper in my form and the laughter more ready, and what's death but a change of tightness? The courier in red came back with a message wrapped like a wound. The matriarch wants to see you. It bowed way too low. It didn't rise until I stepped around it, like it was scared of what my shadow might do to its structure. The path to the matriarch's chamber was a web strung with bells so small you couldn't see them, only feel the air shiver when they rang. She liked to know who was coming. She liked to feel it in her essence. Grandmother Silk. I had heard the name even in the tunnels, where names were luxuries and we used words for larvae and rot instead. They called her the source of thread, the teeth of the loom. They called her other things with their mouths closed so the silk wouldn't hear. Her chamber was dark and lit everywhere. The webs glowed without touching light, like a slow fire passed through them from some deeper wick. She wasn't a shape. She was a place, a gravity. Threads met and parted because she willed it. When she spoke, it was the pressure of 1,000 chords. Vessel. The hunger inside me threw itself down. My form hit the floor. I didn't do it. The straight thread went ice cold. I held on to it like I'd fall if I didn't, and maybe I would have. It felt like hovering at the mouth of the well again, only this time the well breathed. "Why call me that?" I said, and my voice sounded tiny even to me. "Because you don't know your shape yet. Because you're empty in the right places. Because you have no designation but what the audience gave you." "Lace," I said, like reminding her was anything but foolish. "Lace," she agreed, and the word tightened everything in me at once. "You weave well. You please them. Do you know why a dance is better than a fight?" "No." "Because a dance has steps. You can predict where the next movement will fall. You can ask the world to move under it." The bells on the path rang. Someone else was coming. Grandmother's threads twitched like she thought it was amusing or was hungry or both. "Do I have a choice?" I asked, surprising myself. I hadn't meant to say it. "You have the same choice everything has. Be woven or unravel." The courier in red knelt at the doorway, head down like it hoped to continue existing by being really good at touching the floor. Behind it, I heard a light step, quick and precise and practiced, like a rhythm taught precision. "Dancer Lace," the courier said, voice bright with someone else's words. "May I present—" "Don't," said the light step, with laughter that didn't belong to Silk. "Let it guess." I turned. The one in the doorway wore no mask. Its face was the kind that would be called pretty by those who wanted to own it. High structure, a small mouth, eyes bright like knives. Its strands were braided with a single thin red thread that didn't move. It carried a gilded pin like it was just finishing an argument it had already won. "Lace," it said, pleased. "I've been dying to meet you." Its expression said the dying wasn't a metaphor. Grandmother's threads hummed. "Lace, meet lace."
The other one laughed. "Oh, that's mean. It's true. This one isn't you yet, and it won't be if it doesn't stay ahead of your steps. Dance, vessels. Learn each other's patterns." The other one bowed, not because strings moved it, but because it enjoyed the curve. "My designation," it said, like it was the answer to a riddle, "is also lace." I laughed too. Mine wasn't a choice. We danced in the matriarch's chamber while the bells counted for us like a metronome and the webs recorded each cut in perfect, cruel lines. For the first time since the tunnels, I felt something like fear clean enough to keep. Not terror, not hunger. Fear that if I fell, the world would remember its steps, not mine. I didn't fall. When it was done, it said, "Next time, don't laugh where you breathe. It gives you away."
I shifted position because the silk tugged me and because it was right. We were rivals now, or echoes, or reflections. It doesn't matter which word you pick. The cut is the same. The straight thread saved me twice. The first time was in a corridor called the Spindle, a long, narrow run with windows on one side that looked out into nothing. We weren't supposed to stop there. The guard said if you stared too long, you'd see your own reflection walking on the outside of the glass, and it would be happy to be free. I stopped anyway. The silk tugged. I tugged back. In the glass, I wasn't me. The other lace was already there, its strands too neat, its smile false perfect. It tapped the glass with its pin, and the sound came through like a bone against a tooth. Trade, it mouthed, exaggerated, mocking me. It pointed at itself, then at me, then pressed its appendage to the glass where mine would land if I was foolish enough. I pressed mine to my core instead. The straight thread pulsed once, cold. The silk hissed like wet thread on hot iron. It pouted, an expression that would have been pretty if it wasn't so hungry, and lifted its appendage. Its form was clean. No bone, no wound. The pin in its other appendage glittered like a promise. It turned, and as it did, its reflection lagged by half a pulse, like a puppet with slack in its line. The second time the straight thread saved me, I learned what it would cost. A patron asked for a private show. They always do. They mean they want a death close enough to sense. The chamber they gave us was round and small, a bowl again, and the audience sat on the floor like they wanted to be part of the pattern I would carve into my foe. My opponent was masked like a moth. I'd fought moths before. They like the edges of the blade. They die on them like small lights. The silk surged through my form. I let it guide me. I found that thin place in each move where I could almost pretend I had choice. But when the moth staggered back, when the first loop of crimson ribbon laced the air, I heard something strange under the applause, a small, stuttering scrape like bone against stone. The straight thread suddenly burned ice cold against me, a warning. The silk tried to keep my focus on killing the moth, but the thread's coldness gave me just enough strength to look away. There, in the corner behind the audience, sat a cocoon. Unlike the others, this one wasn't still. It hummed and pulsed. That was the source of the scraping, something inside turning, like it was being assembled. I felt drawn to it. I should have finished the step, completed the kill. Instead, for the first time, I completely broke the pattern. The hunger inside me howled in rage. The silk twisted painfully in my veins as I stepped toward the cocoon. The audience hissed. Anger, surprise, excitement all mixed together. I ignored them. As I pressed the bone tip against the humming web, the thing inside jerked violently. The whole shape spun like a spindle in a lazy hand. "Don't," the courier in red whispered from the doorway, too quiet for the patrons to hear. "That's where you go when you cease functioning. That's where they store you." The silk screamed inside me, trying to regain control, but the straight thread went from cold to freezing, flooding my form with painful clarity. I didn't consciously decide to lunge. It was like the thread itself moved me, not to stop me, but to show me the truth. The bone weapon pierced the cocoon. The silk parted like lips. And I saw myself inside. Not exactly me, a version of me with features soft and unfinished, like a half-completed copy. Its mouth opened silently. Its eyes moved along invisible tracks. It wasn't alive yet, but it wasn't lifeless either. It was waiting to be filled, to be animated, to replace me if necessary. Terror, unlike anything I'd known, flooded through me. This was why the other lace existed. This was how the matriarch ensured we were all replaceable. This was why the audience believed I couldn't die. I reeled backward, cold realization shuddering through me. The hunger inside me seized control again, throwing me back towards the moth like nothing had happened, desperate to maintain the performance. The audience made appreciative sounds, thinking it all part of the dance. The moth died as moths always do, and the show continued.
But something had permanently changed. The straight thread had allowed me to break pattern long enough to see the truth. And more importantly, it kept me anchored enough to remember what I'd seen afterward. Without it, the silk would have wiped this knowledge away, reset me like it had surely done countless times before. Later, alone, I asked the webs, do I really cease? Do I get stored in that thing when I'm not performing? You're woven, unwoven, rewoven, the matriarch's threads replied. Rest is another word for forgetting you're on the loom. Do I? I couldn't finish. I didn't want to ask whether any version of me had ever truly existed continuously, or if I was just a series of copies, each one thinking it was the original. You're a step. You're not the dancer, the matriarch's thread said, and the pity in the pressure hurt worse than any physical pain I'd ever felt. The straight thread had saved me from the silk's punishment for breaking pattern, but the cost was this terrible knowledge. I wasn't one being. I was iterations, versions, remade and stored when not needed. But that knowledge, painful as it was the first step towards something like freedom. I started tying the straight thread to every anchor, platform edges, supports, rails, anywhere I might need to remember which direction was mine. The courier in red watched me with the look of something counting debts. Once in a hall with no name, it touched the line and said, "If you ever want to run, take me with you." Why would I want to? I started, and the silk jerked me left, and I saw a guard coming around the corner, and the courier pulled back like it had been burned, its bright wraps suddenly a really poor choice. After that, it brought me messages written in markings that weren't its own. Your steps are too clean. Dirty them. Laugh with your mouth closed. Don't look at the glass. I hated whoever wrote them, and I followed every one. Once, I dreamed of the tunnels. Not the real tunnels. Memory lies like silk lies. In the dream, they were clean and white, and the cocoons were empty only because they had metamorphosed and flown. Red sat beside me, intact, and held out a piece of sustenance. You can stop, it said, and when it moved its mouth, it was crossed with threads. I can't, I said, and it shifted position and fed the sustenance to the cocoon at his feet like it was a pet. I asked the matriarch once, with the last bit of rebellion I had, would you let me go if I asked with the right steps? I wouldn't have to let you go. If you step well enough, you'll unmake your need for me. I don't understand, I said. You will. She was right. That's the worst thing about her. It happened the first time I beat the other lace clean. We'd fought to a standstill, and to exhaustion, and to mutual laughter that made the audience frantic. We'd cut each other and bled red thread that ran to whichever of us needed it more. We'd mirrored each other until the mirrors fogged. But this time, I saw its movement slip. Not by much, a half pulse late on a turn, the kind of mistake only a straight line could detect. The straight thread went cold. I stepped. My bone found its guard. Its blade went wide. I didn't laugh on the inhale. I didn't give away the breath. I cut. The ribbon in its strands snapped. The red thread in it whipped the air like a tongue and then went limp. It froze. It blinked. It looked at me with an expression that was suddenly very different. "Thank you," it whispered, and folded like a collapse of silk, not a falling form. The audience screamed.
The matriarch's pressure filled the hall until the bells in the walls rang without hands. The courier in red was suddenly beside me, its mouth moving. I couldn't hear it. The hunger inside me pounded against my core, demanding the next step, the next, because stopping is the only sin. I didn't take another step. The straight thread held. Somewhere in the noise, in the pull, in the praise, I felt a small warmth, like an appendage touching mine and letting go. Later, I went to the spindle. The glass showed only me. I pressed my appendage to it. The bone touched the pane and left a smear that didn't slide down and made a small, ugly pattern. I stared until I understood. Then I started laughing, not because the silk pulled it from me, but because I was genuinely really afraid. The pattern was the first mark of my designation. Not lace, the one I never had. The silk hissed. The thread went cold. "I'm not ready to know it," I said out loud, to the glass, to the matriarch, to the courier behind the corner pretending not to listen. Not yet. And because the dance always asks for an encore, the bells rang, and the hall opened, and the audience leaned in, and the hunger said step, and I did. I don't remember the time I stopped bleeding. That's not a poetic line, it's just strange. One day my cuts closed with thread and heat and a tight pull. The next day, they just closed. The silk didn't need to make a show of it anymore. It had learned my edges. It trusted me not to come apart without permission. The courier stopped wearing red. It said it drew the wrong kind of attention. It said this while its mouth was full of red thread, working it like a probe. "Jest," it added, pulling it free and hiding it in a fold. "That was a jest." "Be careful," I said. "You'll get infected." It looked at me like it was deciding if I was amusing now. I already am. Patrons started requesting me more often. The one who doesn't laugh like a puppet anymore. The one who cut the other one clean. The one who carries the pin. They like to feel close to the edge of danger. It made them believe in their own constraints. The matriarch called me less. I started thinking this was trust. When she did call me, it was to halls where the webs were so fine I could barely see them, only feel the pressure of threads so thin they might have been concepts. "You've got two choices," she said at last, when I was bold and depleted enough to ask for them. "You can stay lace and dance when I say, and fill the shapes I set under you. Or you can be what the audience thinks you are." "What do they think I am?" I said, though I already knew. I'd seen it in their white ovals and thread-crossed mouths. I'd heard it in the way they held their breath when I turned. "A story," said the matriarch, not unkind. "If you become that, I don't own you, but stories own themselves in worse ways." "I don't understand," I said again. "I say it too much. The silk hates it. It likes certainty, even the wrong kind. If you're Lace the dancer, you'll end when I cut you. If you're Lace the story, you won't end. You'll repeat until the steps become the floor, and the floor is the world." "Which frees me?" I asked, quietly. "Neither. Choose which prison fits better." The courier found me after, on a balcony that pretended to look over a city. It leaned on the rail and tried to make it look casual. "You could run," it said, like it was reading someone else's line off a surface. "You've got a designation." I stiffened. "No." "You traced it in the glass," it said. "You've got a designation. If you say it where the webs cross thinnest, if you say it like you're not asking, Some of the strings will forget you. You don't even know what it is."
It laughed. It was a good laugh, not like silk. It didn't do it often. The Citadel didn't like sound without choreography. "I don't have to. It's yours." I wanted to ask how it knew. I wanted to ask why it cared. I wanted to ask if it had a straight thread of its own, tucked under the wraps it didn't wear anymore. Instead, I said, "It won't let me. The silk." "Then don't ask it," it said. "Ask the part of you that hates it." I started, and it raised an appendage, and I stopped. And it expressed something very, very sad. Everything hates the thing that makes it laugh when it doesn't want to. That night, I made my decision. I traced my true mark on the glass 3 times, but it wasn't enough, so I descended to the 12 arms, tied the straight thread to the iron ring above the well and around my core. Then I whispered my real designation, not lace, but the one I never had. So here's what you get to know. I walk the lines I tie. I laugh when I choose. I keep the needle under skin and do not show it to anyone who hasn't earned the sight. I answer to lace because the world insists on stories, but when the glass tries to claim me, I smear my ugly little name on it and it lets me be. When they say I cannot die, I smile and say nothing. When they say I am a puppet, I nod because I am, and because every living thing is, and because admitting it steals some of the strings back. When I hear music in the web halls, I listen for the straight thread under it. If I cannot hear it, I do not dance. If I can, I dance better than anyone has taught me, because in that thin place between pull and push, I am something like free. And if you feel silk tightening on your wrists while you sleep, if you wake with laughter between your teeth and your hand clenched on a weapon you didn't pick up, if you dream of an audience with mouths crossed by thread, do not go to the mirror. Go to the place where the air smells like rain on stone. Tie a line to something that does not move. Whisper the name nobody gave you because they assumed you would not need it. Whisper it again until you believe the sound belongs to you. Then, when the hunger says step, answer, "Only if I choose the floor." If you cannot say that, come and find me. I will teach you how to laugh on the inhale and how to listen for the straight thread on the exhale. I will teach you how to bow so low the audience loses sight of you. I will teach you the dance the matriarch did not plan. You will not be free. Don't dream that dream. But you will know when you are being moved and when you are moving. You will learn the difference between a story that eats you and a story you can live inside without starving. And if, one day, we meet on a narrow ledge with webs for walls and bells that count our breathing, if the audience leans forward and the hunger presses and the straight thread goes cold, I will not laugh. I will ask you your name. And if you say it, I will let you pass.